Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss. And I'm in my office in the Bronx, New York. It's currently May 30th at about 10:30 in the evening Eastern Standard Time. And I just found out some news that is kind of breaking news, kind of not. But I think it is important, and it's a sensitive topic, so I do want to address this. And I may or may not address it during the Sunday live stream this week, but I want to address it at least in part, because it's about the Tennessee trans shooter. A evil individual, a possessed individual. This is maniacal. And I say that about any mass shooter. Doesn't matter who they are, their color of skin, their gender, their sexual preference. Doesn't matter. All that superficial stuff doesn't matter. If you're taking innocent lives for no reason, that's just the definition of a maniac, of evil in and of itself. So I don't want people to confuse me talking about the Tennessee trans shooter because of the trans nature of that individual. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with what they did. Taking innocent lives of little children is evil by definition. No matter what other category or ranking that you may believe in or not believe in, it doesn't matter. The act itself was evil. And the world is better off without such evil in it. You may disagree. I'm not that much of a Christian. I can't turn my cheek on that kind of action. I just can't. Call me weak, call me whatever you'd like. That's just the reality. So, the Tennessee trans shooter in 2023 walked into a school, a religious school, and killed 3 9-year-old children. That's horrific. For no reason other than that trans person was warped, demented. They had a massive malfunction in their brain. And so we talked about it at that time. I did have coverage of it at that time. You may recall back on April 2nd of 2023 during our live stream, I think this was season 5, episode 14, was the last time that we were directly and mostly speaking about the Tennessee trans shooter and its impact on America, and the fact that we were not able to see the manifesto that the trans shooter had left behind. And we didn't understand why. It didn't make a lot of sense. Why not? Now, since that time, there's been a lot of back and forth with the courts, with the news media. There were leaks that came out. Even I think one of them was by Steven Crowder. There was a lot of controversy about whether or not this manifesto should be released. Mind you, we know of at least 29 mass murderers, mass shooters, whose manifestos have been in part or in whole released to the public. That would include people like Dylan Roof, Christopher Harper Mercer, Brenton Tarrant, John Earnest. There's been a lot of, or at least more than a few, at least 29 of the manifestos in the United States and otherwise that have been released to the public. There is a benefit in that, because perhaps in seeing some of this documentation, people can identify a problem and prevent it from becoming a mass shooting. I mean, that's the ideal. That's the best case scenario. Someone sees the behavior patterns that these mass shooters, especially in this case the Tennessee trans shooter, seeing the behavior patterns, seeing the language that's being used, the activities that they did, perhaps that can identify someone else who is on the edge, who is about to commit acts of evil and prevent them from doing so. Or someone who's just troubled and needs help. And perhaps that will allow that person to see, either by seeing the document, saying they recognize themselves in that document and therefore go to get help, or others who recognize some of these traits in others and reach out to them and say, do you need help? Can we help you? That's the ideal of it. And that's why the documents on these evil individuals who've committed these horrendous, vile actions, that's why their documents have been released in part or in whole, so that we can see that evil, that seed, and perhaps stop it from growing, from turning into what we saw in Tennessee. And that has nothing to do with trans or race or gender or preference. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's about identifying evil and broken people. But it was back and forth in the courts. The mainstream news media, many progressive political organizations wanted to suppress this news. They wanted to change the way that we spoke about this individual because they were trans. And so therefore, it was verboten to mention that some trans individuals are damaged. Some of them have massive problems. That these surgeries that have been promoted overwhelmingly as being the best thing that could possibly happen to resolve all of their problems, well, the reality is it doesn't. Some of these problems aren't based on their gender identification. It has to do with them internally. And cosmetic surgeries will not change that. Cosmetic surgeries don't fix anything. They are exactly what they say they are, cosmetic. They only deal with issues on the surface. They don't change you as an individual. You're still the same you, regardless of what outward-facing visualizations the world gets to see. You are still you inside those cosmetic changes. And if you are damaged, the cosmetics don't change that. They don't improve that. They don't fix that. If you're broken, you're still going to be broken. Even if you are able to attain this image of beauty and perfection that you may imagine exists. And there is no true objectification of beauty. No one ever hits that. No one's perfect. Even no matter what you look at in anyone, everyone has a problem. Everyone has issues. No body is perfect. There's always a problem on the other side. The grass is always greener when you're looking at someone else's grass, but it's never perfect. And it doesn't resolve all the problems. You can get all the wealth in the world. It doesn't fix you. You can have the cosmetics. You can have the body. It doesn't fix you. And we often lose that because America is very materialistic. American society is very fixated on the outward appearance of things rather than the internal reality of what life may be, what individuals go through. So I, like many in the news media, I, like many concerned individuals in the nation, wanted to see the manifesto. Not because of sensationalism, not because of eyeballs, but because in having that knowledge, perhaps there's something that, there's that 1% chance that you'll run into somebody and you can help change their life because you identify something that you can maybe help. Maybe not. Maybe it's 0.5%. Maybe it's 0.1%. Maybe. But at least there's that potential because you have the knowledge, and with the knowledge you can take appropriate action at times. At least that's the way I approach it. I'm sure there are news media that just approach it because of eyeballs and they want to make money. Some are doing it because of politics and they want to promote their political agenda, whether it's for or against whatever. That may be the case. I'm looking at it from a different point of view. I'm looking at it from 1, this has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. 2, gun control doesn't stop these kind of events from happening. Number 3, we have as a nation looked at the issue of trans in the worst way possible blind affirmation and trying to convince people, sell them on the idea that if they have these cosmetic surgeries, their life will be changed, they will be loved by everyone, all of their problems will be fixed, is a lie. It is a lie. And because it is a lie, because it does not fix the person inside, it only changes the cosmetic outside. That is a problem our nation is going to have to deal with. And we now have tens of thousands of kids who have been sold this lie. And they're dealing with the consequences of that. And if we are wrong only 1% of the time, and that is highly unlikely, but if this social experiment is wrong only 1% of the time, we're talking about tens of thousands of young adults whose lives have been ruined. And we have to deal with them. We have to find a way to help them in our society, to integrate them in our society, or deal with the negative consequences of leaving them outcast, leaving them broken. Now, I say all of this because on May 29th, the Manifesto of the Tennessee trans shooter was released by the FBI. 112 pages were released. And you probably didn't hear about it. I didn't hear about it. I'm a political junkie. This is what I do. I follow the news. This is one of the issues that I was addressing back in 2023. I'm massively involved in Second Amendment issues, and I often talk about mass shootings. I have dozens of videos and articles and research that I have done into gun control, Second Amendment issues, amongst other things that I've covered over the last 20 years. So this is something that is on my radar, and I didn't hear about this, so I expect you didn't hear about it either, because MSNBC, CNN, ABC, CBS, the New York Times, the mainstream news media avoided this with a 10-foot pole. They didn't want to talk about this. It is very, very quiet. As far as I know, only 2 local regional news organizations in Tennessee actually published not only the story, but also links to the FBI release of information for the public. Now, considering the massive amount of news and backlash that came out in 2023 and 2024 about releasing any of the information about this manifesto, and the claim that releasing the manifesto would doom all trans people, that it was somehow horrific to the alphabet community, LGBT, the whole alphabet, that it would somehow harm them all more than the actual shooting harmed an entire community. I think that's ridiculous. But the news media said, you don't need to know about this. The national news media that pumped up the story in the first place, that used this story to push an agenda to promote the trans movement, and blind affirmation, that whole push, they had nothing to say now. They have nothing to say. That's kind of sad. But I did just find out about this, and I do want to cover it a bit. Now, there's not a lot of news out at this moment. But what we do know, as mentioned by, this is news station KOMO News out of Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. And they do report that the over 100 pages, 112 pages have been released. And they do provide a link to the FBI documentation. And you can see it here. There's a couple of pages in particular that I think are of note. One of the pages, as we can see here from 2022, this individual, the trans shooter, is damaged beyond all belief. This is a person who had a long-term problem, and their cosmetic surgeries did not help. The promise that they have been made by the society, by the blind affirmation movement, did not help. This person was broken, massively broken, and they were enveloped by evil. And as you can see from the FBI release, this person back in May of 2022, well before the shooting itself, they were already looking forward to death. They were looking forward to ending their life in violence. This is a person who is broken. And they had a list of things in their life. And maybe these are some of the things that the news media didn't want you to know about. Some of the things on their list were to watch cartoons. Okay. The Powerpuff Girls, Avatar, The Last Airbender, Samurai Jack, Robot Chicken, DuckTales. These aren't things that are different than everyone else. These are popular cartoons and very lighthearted at that. They wanted to read some books like The Tao of Pooh, Alice in Wonderland, The Secret Life of Nim, Lolita, Matilda. Now, some of these materials you may see other allegories to, that this hints at some issues of personality, of self-identity that this person had. They wanted to watch all the Studio Ghibli movies. They wanted to watch a lot of Disney movies. The Rescuers, Mulan, Moana, Pocahontas, Peter's Dragon, Iron Will. These aren't crazy movies. White Fang, Stargirl. These aren't movies that you would think, oh my God, this is such an indication of something absolutely horrendous. This is a telltale sign of someone who is broken. It isn't. Many of these movies are things that I've seen. Many of the cartoons and anime are things that I've watched. Many of the books are books that I have read, and so have millions, if not tens of millions of other people around the world over my lifetime and even to this day. Some of the YouTube, looking at Final Fantasy stories, looking at the Resident Evil games and their history, the history of Silent Hill, Pokemon cards. These aren't unusual things. And we see also that this individual, and a lot of this has been covered up, redacted by the FBI for security reasons and to prevent any kind of duplication. So I'm perfectly fine with that kind of sensitive material being covered up. And you'll see in a few moments some information about specific individuals has been removed from the public availability to protect that individual who are innocent in this whole investigation of what motivated this damaged, dangerous, evil person. Receipts for things like guns and ammo and other things that they were using. But I think this is when we start seeing something. When we get to pages 21 and beyond, 22 and beyond, we start seeing some of the psychology. And this is how we know this is a person who is broken. Why does my brain not work right? That's not a normal conversation. 'Cause I was born wrong. That's a person who has a problem with themselves. That is an internal issue. That isn't cosmetic. Changing the outward appearance, whether in clothing or in surgery, does not change the internal conflict that this person obviously was going through. Everything hurts. Nature. This is a problem. And perhaps if they had talked to people, there would have been better answers. Maybe they could have gotten answers for what was bothering them, what was the issue that they had, why everything seemed to hurt them. Were they being rejected in their love? And we will see over and over again that this person's very angry at individuals, others, because they're not living the life that they wanted. That trans individuals saying they want to be loved, and they aren't. And they were promised over and over by the mainstream news media, in the movies, in TV shows, in books, that if they changed their cosmetic appearance, that they would suddenly be loved by everyone. They would be accepted by everyone. That they would be an integral part of the society and community, which isn't true. Because that's not why people are loved or accepted by their community and individuals. It's about you being you. That's what makes you attractive and desirable and part of your community. You. Being a whole, mostly unbroken individual. I'm not saying everyone's perfect. We're not. We all have flaws and defects, but most of us aren't broken. And we can relate to other individuals. We interact with individuals. We interact with our society to the best of our ability, and normally that's a positive. And that is how we find loved ones. That's how we get to enjoy a society and live a prosperous, mostly prosperous life. This individual didn't get that. Again, the FBI covered up some of the information here to protect individuals. And we don't know, or at least in my review of this document the first time, I didn't notice them whether this was a unrequited love, that they were in love with someone and that person was not reciprocating to them. And we don't know if that's before, but presumably by the date, it's after they had their cosmetic surgeries. So even with the cosmetic changes that society has been telling tens of thousands, an entire generation of kids, that if you have these cosmetic changes, you will be loved. Others will want you and you will be desired. Well, this trans individual found that wasn't true. Apparently. That they were seeking love, not that they had attained it. Even though they did what they were told. The blind affirmation was there. People said, yes, have the surgery. Change your life. Change your outward appearance. Don't change the internal you. Change the external you. And then you'll be loved. And they weren't. And they didn't get what they were promised. And this person became more bitter and more broken, which led to the unfathomable devastation that they unleashed. This person hates life itself, as we see in some of these pages. They hurt and they hate life. And this is a recurring theme. They want love, but they are heartbroken. It seems to be an unrequited love, and they are in pain because they feel unloved, because the promise that was made to them did not happen. They were not accepted. And they believe this because, in part, because of their outward appearance, but it's all internal. They were wallowing in this darkness and being broken rather than trying to fix that. And they fixed the cosmetics, the way they looked, the way others would see them, not how they saw themselves. And of course, there's the whole thing about autism, and autism had nothing to do with this. Being trans probably had almost nothing to do with this. This is about someone who was broken. That's what the shooting was about. Someone who was absolutely broken. And we failed as a society, as that community in Nashville. They failed to be able to see the problem and try to help. To get this person the help they needed, not the appearance of help that was offered. The blind affirmation that just gave an empty promise of, this will fix all your problems. It's like, you take this pill. Here's a pill and it will fix all your problems. No, it won't. It's no different than the promise of drugs. Your life will be better. You won't care. You'll feel great. No, you won't. That's a temporary Band-Aid on the problems that you have. And most people who have addiction, when I've talked to people and I've read about it, most people who have addictions, they often say they're chasing that temporary high, that temporary forgetfulness of what their reality was, that something was broken in them, something was missing in them, and they used that drug, they used that action to fill that void, or more importantly, to band-aid that void in their life, rather than deal with it directly. And the people who recover from addiction, at least the ones that I've talked to, their answer is, once they actually address that void in their life, once they try to fix that hole in them, that thing that is missing, that thing they think is broken, once they deal with that, then they could end their addiction. Then they became recovering individuals. Not before. At least that's the ones I've talked to. Others may say, well, Mike, no, there's a different process. There's a different thing to that. But that's the experience I've had in talking to many addicts of many types, alcohol and drugs and other broken individuals in the last 57 years of my life. This is the recurring thing I hear. But notice, this individual keeps saying, I have to end themselves, that they're seeking a way to end. They are fixated on ending. And that's a problem. And their fixation is focused on inflicting pain. And I'll skip a bunch of this because it's a repeat of how badly they feel over and over and over again. And I want to get to, this is page 109 out of 112. And it says, I have to kill so that I can be remembered. You're not. This is a footnote in history, current history, not even national history, not history of the world. This is a footnote. And the mainstream media is part of making sure that we forget. They've moved on to other stories. All of the organizations pushing the trans agenda, they've moved on. The advocates with blind affirmation, they've moved on. The people who oppose all of that have moved on. Again, like most mass shooters, you're not getting what you want. They want to be remembered. You're not. They want to be idolized. You're not. They want to be memorialized or pitied or some emotion about them continuing. It isn't. Same thing with George Floyd. The emotion, gone. Some people still remember George Floyd. Almost no one does. Jordan Neely. No one, very few continue to remember his name. And not everyone I'm mentioning right now is someone who inflicted self-harm or caused harm against themselves. Some of their actions did lead to their ultimate demise, but it's always the same thing. Those who are seeking glory through doing something evil are not remembered. Almost never. And neither is this trans shooter from Tennessee. There is no glory. There is no memorial. There's no memory of them. The actions, that'll last longer. People will remember the insanity and the evil, not the person who did it. So this broken individual got nothing. They achieved nothing that they wanted to achieve. They're a footnote in a minor current history story, and the world has moved on from them. They are not going to be remembered. The one thing they thought, oh, well, maybe that will make it worthwhile. It's not worthwhile at all. You achieved nothing. And those who are broken and thinking, well, maybe they should copycat or do that, you won't be remembered. No more than any of the other names that I mentioned earlier on this program. You don't remember who those people are. You may, if I mentioned the shooting, that the place that they took their acts of evil, you may remember that. You might. Depending on how long it's been, you may not even remember that. But their names are footnotes in research that most people will never remember. Most people do not care, do not pity them, do not miss them. So they achieve nothing. Just an act of evil, random, misplaced, misdirected evil. Could this trans shooter, could they have been, how can I say? Maybe they could have had a better life, a more full life, a more complete life, had they not taken these actions. Had they tried to fix them, the internal, who they were first, rather than the blind affirmation, the cosmetic surgeries, the visual appearances of being whole and complete. If they weren't focused on that, maybe they could have helped themselves. Maybe if they sought out people to get help from, rather than wallowing in the darkness in their own broken selves, maybe there would have been a better outcome. Maybe they could have had a better life. Maybe they could have done something that truly would have been memorable instead of being vile and despicable. And again, it doesn't matter if they're trans, whatever gender, whatever color, whatever nationality. None of the rest of that stuff matters. Maybe they could have done something with their lives that we'd all respect, and it would be worthy of memory. They could have, maybe. And that's the thing that I hope, if this reaches that one person who has been failed by the promises of blind affirmation, that has been failed the promise that if they change their cosmetics, this permanent surgeries and life-changing actions, and perhaps you pause and don't do that and work on yourself, maybe you'll have a better outcome. Or maybe it's after you've done that and you still need help. You still need to be fixed, because what really needed to be fixed was internal. Maybe this will help you reach out. Maybe none of that applies to you and you just happen to be a broken person. You don't have the question of identity. You don't have the question of gender or preferences or color. You don't have, or ethnicity or religion. You don't have those problems, but you're still broken. You still don't feel right. Then reach out. Reach out for help. Reach people. There are hotlines that are on 24/7 every day. Every day. These hotlines are available to help you. You know, at the beginning, for years, from 2020 moving forward for about 4 years, every show we had the suicide hotline, the domestic abuse hotline, the substance abuse hotline available. Right now you can go onto Google, onto Yahoo, any of the search engines, DuckDuckGo, and you can find instant contacts to help groups for whatever it is you feel like you are going through. You have a problem with addiction, you have problems with your marriage, you have a problem with the way you view yourself. There are people who are willing to help you. And they're there 24 hours a day. You have a phone, you're probably watching this on your cell phone. Maybe your computer, your laptop, your TV. You have access right now to get help. And you should. There's no reason that you should suffer more than you have to. There's no reason for you to suffer if you can be helped, if it can be fixed. And overwhelmingly, it can. It may take time. It may be difficult. It may be, you may have to put in a lot of effort. But overwhelmingly, people can fix the problems in their life. It's challenging, no doubt. But everyone is challenged. There is no perfect person walking around. There's no perfect person in movies or internet and TV and singing. And name your neighbors. No one is perfect. Everyone is facing challenges in their life pretty much every day of their life. You may not see it. Doesn't mean it's not happening. When I was homeless, most people didn't know all the signs that I had that were saying Mike is homeless at this time in his life, which is why I'm an advocate for homelessness. Because I went from being homeless to owning a home eventually. Eventually. I had to rebuild my life, but I eventually was able to own a home. I've lost that home, but guess what? Life has its ups and its downs. You don't know that because you're watching me in a video. There are many people who are watching this and have never seen me before and didn't know, oh my God, he's been homeless? Yes. Yes, I was. And I survived. He owned a home? Yes, I did. For 20 years. So, yes, life happens to us all. We have ups and downs. I've been rich. I've been abject poor. I've been in between. I've owned businesses. I've had them fail. I've had them succeed. Like anyone, we've all had challenges. Been in relationships, had them break up. Everyone goes through these things, and it always feels like you're the only one suffering the negative things at any given moment because you're living that life, you're living that moment. But the moment passes. Every time. It passes. All of the bad things in life tend to only be a low in the roller coaster before you rise up to a high in the roller coaster that is life. And you will go up and down those highs and lows many times. Many, many times. The roller coaster of life is never flat for anyone ever. When you have problems, seek solutions. Those solutions don't involve harming innocent others. Never. That is never a solution. It will never provide you the answers that you want. It will never make you feel better. It will never grant you your dream of you want to be immortal or remembered forever. You won't be. You won't. Instead, look at the positive. How can you help yourself? How can others help you? How can you then share that help with others? You can enrich your life and others' lives. That's why I talk about being homeless. To help inspire, hopefully that one person if I can, or dozens if at all possible, to help them to realize that, is it a struggle? Absolutely. Can you overcome that problem? Absolutely. Will it be difficult? Sure. Painful? Maybe. Difficult? Guaranteed. Can you do it? Yes. Overwhelmingly? Yes. I'm not saying that because of blind affirmation. I'm saying it because of experience, because I did it. And I am not the most exceptional human being that has ever existed. And if I could do that for my life, I'm damn sure you can do it in yours. I can't say that's true of I can't speak to internal conflicts in the mind. I can't speak to what others feel. And I'm not trying to. But I am giving you an alternative. Because I have to believe, from my experience and the experiences of so many that I've known, the answer isn't self-deletion. The answer isn't harming others, harming innocents. That's never the answer. It never achieves the goal, whatever your goal might be. They always fail. You gain nothing. If you're religious, and pretty much every religion agrees on this, every religion agrees that if you're religious at all, going in the same manner, taking on the same actions as the Tennessee trans shooter will damn you to hell. If you're not religious, it leaves you nothing. You're just empty. You'll be forgotten. I don't want that for anyone. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. We got the 112 pages of the Tennessee Shooter Manifesto. Is it worth reading, even in cursory review? Kind of. If you're looking at it for how can I help someone, If I see these things in someone, that someone is broken in this way, that they're fixated on self-deletion, that they're fixated on harming themselves and others, yes, if that helps you identify that and help people, then it's probably worth it. If you're looking at it for politics, skip it. It's old political news. The majority of the American public have forgotten about it. Not worth retreading just for some clicks and clickbait. It's not worth it. If you're looking for politics, skip it. There's other political issues more pressing and more important for the American people. We have, again, tens of thousands, an entire generation that we may have completely screwed up. Let's focus on fixing them. Let's focus on making sure that if we got it wrong, even for 1%, that 1% will not be left on their own. They won't be ostracized. They won't be in pain. That we'll give them some kind of solution as best as we can. I know someone's going to say, but Mike, you just don't like trans people. See, that's not true. That's not true. This isn't about not like, I know many trans people. I've known many trans people. Before it was popular to know trans people, I knew dozens of trans people. I don't care. That's their life. They're grown adults, every one of them that I've known. Grown adults, they can live their life however they want, doesn't harm others, then I don't care. Do what you do. That's on you. That's your closed doors. Do what you're doing and live your life happy. Don't harm anyone. Don't harm children. I don't care. No, it's not that. I don't like the trans political movement that wants to mandate blind affirmation, that wants to put a bunch of band-aids over some individuals who have deep problems internally and promise them that you put on this cosmetic change and your life will be better. That's just a lie. That doesn't happen. That's what I don't like. That's what I'm against. I just had to get this off my chest. I just need to share this with you. And again, I don't know if I'll talk about it on Sunday. If people want to talk about it in the chat, bring it up and ask me questions. I'll be happy to talk about it on the Sunday live stream at that point for sure. If not, maybe it comes up somewhere in the future. Maybe it doesn't. But I can tell you this. Hiding the manuscript was purely political. It wasn't about helping anyone. It wasn't to benefit anyone. It was there to benefit politics. And that is a disservice to our nation because it hid from everyone a certain reality, a clear reality. Making cosmetic changes don't fix deep internal problems. It's not a solution. And you can make the equivalent, and it's not a great equivalent, but saying, the universal basic income, UBI. UBI doesn't make poor people middle class or stop them from being poor. It doesn't work. Minimum wage doesn't help poor people. That's the data. That's the information. We know this for a fact. Legalizing drugs doesn't stop drug use. And ignoring what's happening with the trans community, the individuals, not the politics, but the individuals, doesn't help. When someone is hurt, telling them change the cosmetics and life will be perfect is one of the worst lies you could possibly tell them. I don't have a lot of answers. I hope what I'm saying gets through, makes sense. Let me say again. If you're fixated on ending things, don't. Reach out to the suicide hotline. If you're looking to harm others because of the pain you feel, don't. Reach out to others. If you have issues, especially if they're dealing with substances and addiction, reach out to others. We are communal beings. We do best When we are integrating ourselves in our society, and our society, our community is able to work with us, that means you have to reach out. And I know that means you'll be vulnerable. We all are. May not seem like it, but we all are vulnerable every day. And being part of a society helps us deal with those vulnerabilities. Everyone may not realize that every minute of every day, but that's the reality. Even this interaction, just listening to me, is an interaction of community. Hopefully it helps. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, they finally released the manifesto in part. The world didn't change. LGB didn't change. Trans people and the trans political agenda didn't change. There was no reason to hold it off this long. To prevent the community, the society, from identifying and saying, maybe there's something we missed. Maybe in understanding these words, this person who is broken, who is seeking love and not attaining it, that person whose internal was damaged, even as their cosmetic external was changed. Maybe we have to look at something different. Maybe there's another solution. All right, I'm going to end it there. Again, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you, reaching across the world, talking about issues like this and many, many others in politics and other issues. And we look forward to hearing from you through your chat, your super chat, your Rumble rants. We look forward to having a conversation with you. But again, this was something that I just found out about. The mainstream news media has tried to bury this because of politics. And I thought it was something that we should discuss. But let me know what you think. I look forward to seeing the comments. I look forward to seeing you this Sunday. Thank you.